And good morning, Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill, and welcome to Tuesday's edition, December the 13th. Yes, it is December the 13th. How many more days of Christmas until Christmas do we have? I tell you what, yesterday was a phenomenal show. I'm grateful to each and every one of you for joining yesterday's show. American Humane and Futures in Education, two very powerful organizations that are both helping our veterans with PTS and TBI and also helping the future of the next generation. And I tell you what a perfect lead in to what our commentary will be today. For many of you out there, I am grateful to the women who are watching the show, to the men who are watching the show. I have looked at the back end and I am so encouraged and supported by the power of you who tune in, whether it's on my YouTube channel at Common Sense America with Eden Hill, whether it's through Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, here on StreamYard. I am grateful to each and every one of you. We are all about kitchen table discussions here at Common Sense America. We are all about breaking down the issues that are facing our children, the next generation, our military, our taxpayer dollars, yes, our back pockets, yes, our savings accounts, yes. We are all about bringing the truth to you. That is why Common Sense America was founded. That's why we are going on in our fourth month and headed right into January. And we're going to be exposing what is happening in the new Congress. We're going to be exposing what is happening in the Biden administration. We are going to be exposing the truth. I tell you what, I have a heavy thing to drop on you on Friday, and I know that you will enjoy it, but I know that you will also learn, because a lot of what the lamestream media is talking about is not what you will hear on Friday. So save the date for Friday, December the 16th. Yes, it is right before Christmas, but I did a very special pre-recorded interview that I want you guys to hear and I want you guys to be aware of. We have a great group of guests coming to our show this morning. Young voices, love young voices, both here in America and in the UK. And I tell you what, I've been a royal watcher for so many years, but I tell you what, something that's really gotten to me during this holiday season is the coal that Harry and Megs continue to inflict upon us during this holiday season. Come on. William and Catherine came to the United States to do some good, and then you have to drop your Netflix series. And Spare, the book that's coming out, it only has a 2.2 Goodreads right now on Goodreads, which is a great location to check out the books that you're going to order. Don't order Spare. It is not worth your time and it's not worth your read. Do I waste my 3 hours of my precious life watching the Netflix series? No. I tell you what, from Megyn Kelly to a lot of other commentators, they gave it to me on a silver platter. But one thing we will be talking about is the monarchy, King Charles, what is in store for the monarchy as Harry and Megs are on their woe is me tour. Oh my gosh, get over yourselves. Victimization? Really? Really? Show me something that's worth talking about. And it's not the two of you, but I will take a half hour to break it down for you. But you know what? We're going to also be talking about Christmas and what William and Catherine are doing for the UK and for the people, not to get a pack on their back, not to be, oh, here, look at me, set up the paparazzi. No, for the people of the UK, to think about them and what is ahead for 2023. But before we get to that segment, as you can tell, I am zooped up on my Zabars and Pete's coffee this morning, and we're ready to rock and roll on this Tuesday. We are bringing over to the show Charles Brandt, and I'll tell you what, we're talking about common sense here as it comes down to a weary taxpayer, you, me, and everybody else for that matter, the student debt schemes that the Biden administration continues to stir. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, it's not right. It's not legal. Really? Yes, it's not. So what is ahead for the 2023 taxpayers? Are we going to be victimized yet again by the Biden administration or whoever is in office? I don't even know. Do you guys know? Well, we're going to be bringing over Charles Brandt. He's here right now to join us. Good morning, sir. How are you? Welcome to Common Sense America. It's first time meeting you. I'm so glad to have you.
Good morning, Eden. I'm doing great this morning. How about yourself?
I'm great. I'm riled up and ready to go. I was just looking at your Federalist article that you did back at the end of November. You know what? If you could, I know that you have an amazing background in law, that you are all about the courts, you are all about these items of what is ahead with the student loan debt. But could you break it down for the moms and dads out there for the kitchen table discussion? What is ahead with the student loan debacle and the scheme that Biden is putting into and taking away from our money, our own money? Talk to me about that.
Well, I appreciate the kind introduction. I'm certainly no expert, but I am a law student, learning more every day. And I can say that a judge in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas did actually strike down and vacate the student loan forgiveness program. Mm-hmm. And over in the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, Judge Mark Pittman's order, the one to which I just referred, is in the Fifth Circuit now. In the Eighth Circuit, that Court of Appeals actually stayed implementation of the plan without reaching the merits that Judge Pittman did. And from the Eighth Circuit, the Biden administration is appealing to the United States Supreme Court, where we will be hearing oral arguments in February and can expect a decision on June. Now, the big issue with respect to challenging this program in court it has to do with a doctrine called standing. Mm-hmm. Under Article 3 of the United States Constitution, the judicial power, that is the federal courts, mm-hmm. Is limited to cases or controversies arising under the laws of the United States. Mm-hmm. Cases and controversies have three central components to them. Mm-hmm. The first is that there is an injury in fact, that is, a litigant has a personal stake in the outcome of the litigation that is concrete and particularized, not a generalized grievance.
Okay.
And for that reason, taxpayers pretty much never have standing to sue, with some exceptions here or there.
Okay.
The second element is causation, the idea that the challenged conduct of the defendant is fairly traceable to the conduct alleged to be unlawful in court. And then the third is redressability, the notion that the courts will be able to redress or remedy the asserted harm, not merely speculatively, okay. But likely.
Okay.
So the Biden administration, in rather cynical fashion, has actually argued in court, has had the audacity to argue that no one has standing to challenge this program.
What?
And that
that sounds like an authoritarian measure. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, come on. I mean, you don't have to agree with me, but I'm going to say that's authoritarian rule right there. Go ahead. I digress.
So, I mean, I think you're hitting the nail on the head insofar as the president has invoked a 2003 act called the HEROES Act to justify this power grab.
Yes.
So this was passed on the onset of the Iraq War, mm-hmm. With what I imagine was an eye toward ensuring that our service members mm-hmm. would not be put in a worse off financial position because of their student debt obligations under the Higher Education Act.
Right.
And so it authorizes the Secretary of Education to waive or modify mm-hmm. certain requirements under the Higher Education Act that are directly in connection with a national emergency and that have inflicted direct economic hardship upon affected individuals.
So here we go. Here we go.
So as you can probably tell from the language I've just discussed, Congress was really contemplating specific relief for narrow subsets of borrowers, certainly not nationwide relief for millions on the basis of, say, a pandemic emergency. So the Biden administration's argument is basically something along the lines of this. Congress vested this authority in the secretary in 2003, and unbeknownst to Congress, and unbeknownst to really anyone in the entire universe, Congress had authorized nearly $400 billion, an expense greater than the GDP, the annual GDP of Singapore, mind you, had authorized such an expense, 20 years down the line. It's an almost farcical argument on its face.
Yes.
Because the administration was not banking on the HEROES Act, in truth. They were banking on the limited capacity of the federal court system. And they, I think, truly believed that no one would have standing to challenge this. Now, Judge Mark Pittman in U.S. District Court for the District of Northern Texas found that 2 individuals did have standing, pursuant to a doctrine called the procedural injury doctrine, which we need not boggle ourselves down with. The Eighth Circuit, more critically, found that Missouri likely has standing to challenge the program because they have a quasi-public, quasi-private student loan financer that stands to lose revenue as a result, or likely stands to lose revenue as a result of this debt forgiveness program. And for that reason, the state itself is likely to suffer an injury, in fact, fairly traceable to the loan forgiveness program and likely to be redressed by favorable judicial judgment. So I should say, though, that with regard to states, there is something the Supreme Court has called a special solicitude with respect to standing. It's easier for states to establish standing than it is for you or me or taxpayers in general to establish standing, because they are sovereigns and they can assert semi-sovereign interests in injury to which can constitute an injury, in fact, for Article 3 purposes.
Okay. I have up here on the quote, in this country, quote, he admonished, and this is the judge in Texas, we are not ruled by an all-powerful executive with a pen and a phone. And you cited that in your Federalist article in November, end of November. And, that really struck me hard because, the rest of America is seeing this authoritarian manner in which Biden continues to want to rule. He is not a king. He is not, China. He is not Venezuela. He is not Russia, but yet he is acting like that. So what do we do? Hey, I paid off my student loans by scraping my knees and working my tuchus off. And so I now have to pay more in taxes. I am a weary taxpayer, just like you said in the title of your article. We weary taxpayers can thank the legal doctrine for the death of Biden's student bailout scheme. It is a scheme. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's what else he does in this administration and before and even after. So my question to you is, the HEROES Act, my husband served in Iraq. I saw many of my friends serve our nation and did not ask for anything. And the HEROES Act is, in fact, a HEROES Act. But this Ponzi scheme is not even close to an HEROES Act. So what is ahead for my dollar in 2023? What is ahead for, and let me ask 2 questions. What is ahead for the new college students, those who are going to be going to school next year? Are they going to be going in and saying, okay, we're sliding right through, we're going to get our degree, but we know, Biden's going to be covering every aspect of it? Is that, in fact, really going to be happening next?
Well, to answer your first question as to taxpayers, it seems to me that if the Supreme Court finds that Missouri has standing, it's going to strike this program down, pursuant to a doctrine called the Major Questions Doctrine, which really was brought to the forefront of the Supreme Court's jurisprudence just last term in a case called West Virginia versus EPA, that struck down an EPA attempt to regulate greenhouse gas emissions without the green light from Congress, invoking, very kind of vague ancillary provisions of what are called their organic statutes, the statutes under which these agencies function. The idea is that when an agency asserts a really profound authority over walks of social, political, or economic life, they really need to point to clear congressional authorization.
Right.
And so with respect to the EPA and in the West Virginia case, the court said, nope, that a vague ancillary provision of I believe it was the Clean Air Act is not going to cut it. We need Congress to really grapple with the issue and speak clearly on the matter, because, a republic, as Justice Neil Gorsuch said in a concurrence, is inherently a thing of the people. And Congress,
Yes.
is comprised of our elected representatives, and
Right.
they serve at the mercy of voters at the end of the day. The same cannot be said for faceless bureaucrats in this vast administrative state, pretty
Exactly.
much none of whom we even know or are particularly familiar with the exception of some higher level presidential appointees.
Right.
Now, with respect to taxpayers, hopefully the courts find that Missouri has standing. And if they do, it seems, it seems to me extremely likely that the court will strike the program down, either on a statutory ground, maybe under the APA, which is the Administrative Procedure Act. Judge Mark Pittman actually rejected that argument because he did not believe that the debt forgiveness program, or rather the authority of the secretary when exercised, is subject to what is called notice and comment procedures under the Administrative Procedure Act. It is likely, or it could be likely rather, that they will strike it down on constitutional grounds. The idea that this infringes the major questions doctrine, which is a means by which the court has started to police the boundaries of the separation of powers. That if Congress wants the president, under whom and pursuant to whose authority the agencies function and serve, to exercise these profound powers, they can delegate rulemaking authority there too, but they really have to speak clearly on the matter, so it's clear that the people have made the decision ultimately, and not a faceless technocrat or the president of the United States himself. And what was your second question?
Sure. My second question really is the new generation of those who are going to be applying for college, going to college. My godson is already looking at colleges, and he's only a freshman. And I sit there and think about his generation and what's ahead for them. Do we give them handouts where they will never learn what it is, the value of a dollar, and just, the government will pay for that? But do they realize when the government pays for that, they are controlling you? They are going to be taking something else from you because of that. You never say the government, just like Ronald Reagan said, I'm paraphrasing, but when the government says we're here from you, you always run the other way because they are going to be taking something from you. And, as a veteran spouse, as my husband has served our nation for 23 plus years, we have seen what the VA, and I'm diverting for just a second, just to give this example, but we have seen what the VA has not done for my husband as he gave his life and nearly did not come home. And so I sit here and think about the next generation. And they're going to say, okay, we'll vote for Biden. We'll vote for the next dictator because they're going to pay for our college education. But do they realize in the back of their heads, they're going to have to pay something back, and it's going to come back and it's going to haunt them? So that's my question. What do parents do with this next generation of college students? How can we educate this next generation? You being a law student, you have a phenomenal law career ahead of you. What do we say to them? How do we educate them so they can get out of this social mindset, the government is going to take care of me?
Well, I think there's two things. One is, the practicality that nothing in life is free. At the end of the day, when the government pays for something, it's going to have to cover that expenditure by one of two means. The first is taxation, and
keep going up.
the second is increased inflation. Which is worse than taxation in the sense that there's less political accountability to be had. It's like a silent tax on middle and lower income Americans. I say that because, of course, they spend a greater proportion of their income on, groceries and toiletries, things used in daily life than, say, in Elon Musk, who's spending, probably far less of his income on those, percentage-wise on those types of items that we all need to, make it through daily life. The second is remind them, of course, that the Constitution is, as Randy Barnett, an originalist scholar at Georgetown Law
Mhm.
Center says, it's not, it is the document that governs those who governs us. And I'm some maybe paraphrasing or quoting here, I'm not quite positive, but each elected official takes an oath to the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah.
And I have it right here. I have my little pocket Constitution right here at the ready. The authorities our elected officials often claim, Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter, are often actually not there. And we, the people, can hold them to account. The Constitution itself starts with, we the people of the United States.
I love that line. I love it. And so easily those elected officials, both new and who've been there, called term limits, forget about we the people that put them there. I've heard so many elected officials say, and in passing, I cannot wait to tell these people what to do. And I sit there and say, oh, you got it backwards, person. You got it completely backwards. We, the people of the United States, we put you in office. We tell you what to do. We hold you accountable. You are there at the service of the people, not at the service of your bank account and not at the service of anybody else but us.
Exactly right. I mean, I like to think of the Constitution as an employment contract.
Yes.
And it's a contract signed by essentially elected officials when they take their oath for office and they swear over the Bible that they will protect and defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States. So it is disconcerting that people on the right and the left have an increasing disregard for this document, which I believe to be one of the most ingenious ever written in the history of the world. I will say that as a law student, speaking practically, I applied for the debt forgiveness because I was like, why not? If I'm going to pay for it in taxes anyway, might as well apply. Now, I'd rather it be struck down by the courts because it's just an egregious abuse of power. But let's think: should a taxpayer really pay for my law degree? A law degree? Like, no, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous on its face.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the individuals who stand to benefit from this program are those who have gone to grad school, law school, medical school, you name it, and really don't need the help in the first place. And, rank and file taxpayers, truck drivers, plumbers, electricians, people who, by the way, oftentimes make more than those with, say, gender studies degrees from Harvard or even English degrees from Yale, should not have to foot the bill for what really is a luxury.
Exactly.
So I'd like to lay out that I indeed applied for the program as
Thanks for being honest and candid about that.
because I'd have to pay for it via increased taxes to begin with. Now, again, I'd very much prefer that the court strike it down because it's just an egregious abuse of executive authority, in my view. And that, if indeed Missouri has standing, and if the Fifth Circuit finds that the two litigants in the case that Judge Pittman decided also have standing, this program really deserves to lose on the merits because it violates the separation of powers. If we look to the first page of the Constitution, again, this is just the first page, Article 1, Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States.
Go figure. Checks and balances. That's what it's all about. Yes. Say that one more time for my audience. Please say that one more time because we need to be reminded of the powers of checks and balances, the powers of the legislative body, and not to put all of our hope in government, but to put our hope in the fact that we, the people, are more powerful than anybody. We, the people in our nation's backyard, we, the people at our kitchen tables, we, the people who make the decisions, are more powerful than any presidential speech or any Senate speech.
That's absolutely right. Again, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States. Now, what Biden has essentially done here, and what the major questions doctrine seeks to prevent is usurped, in my view, an inherently legislative power, that being of expenditure. I mean, this is an individual, President Biden, who at the flick of a pen is trying to spend about $400 billion without going through Congress. That has to be, one of the most, not the most, but one of the most egregious abuses of executive power in the history of our country.
Yes, it is.
I mean, it's almost jaw-dropping, to tell you the truth.
Can you repeat that number one more time for all of us, just so it can sink in? You said 400 billion?
It stands to cost, I think, around 400 billion. Estimates vary, but again, that is over
that's our taxpayer dollars.
Well, eventually, right? We are going to pay for it in increased inflation, so devaluation of the currency, or are we going to pay for it in increased taxation? And when I say we, I oftentimes mean our children, our grandchildren, because our debt is in the 30 trillions now.
Yep.
It's going to take time to pay that off, and we have interest on that debt, mind you. And interest rates are actually increasing because the Federal Reserve needs to increase them to tamp down inflation. So it's kind of this vicious cycle of sorts where government spends and there is an instant, political gratification. But the tax man will eventually, come to the door. Isn't it what Clarence Clearwater calls the tax man in that song? What's that song called? A Fortunate One. He eventually comes knocking on the door and, the bill comes due, and it's probably going to be our kids or grandkids just because of, the sheer, breadth of our national debt at this point in time.
Unless those 80,000 IRS agents come before that. I mean, come on, Charlie, come on. Right. That's happening. That they are spinning their wheels and they cannot wait to come to our doorstep. Who's next? Who's going to be the Grinch that stole Christmas?
There are simply not enough Jeff Bezoses and Elon Musks for the Democratic Party to fund their extravagant social agenda. Yes. The idea that they're going to go after, millionaire and billionaire cheapskates who are not paying their taxes, it's really farcical. They're going to go after middle class individuals, and I think predominantly middle class businesses.
Yeah.
And mind you, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos can afford to hire tax attorneys, well versed in the law, who can exploit every loophole left behind by Congress to really reduce their taxable income and to ensure that they're maximizing their disposable income. The rank and file Americans are not able to do the same. Yeah. And so you have when you get a letter from the IRS saying, wow, this balance is due, it's really scary.
Yes, it is.
It's a really scary thing.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And, what's especially scary is that, in today's age, we have, these administrative agencies, which essentially execute, all three forms of power designated to each respective branch of the Constitution. They make rules on the basis of, delegated rulemaking powers from Congress. That is, essentially a legislative power. They enforce those rules against private parties in the courts of law, and oftentimes in kind of their own specialized courts, say tax court. And they also will adjudicate cases or controversies within their jurisdiction, which is a form of the judicial power. And it was, James Madison who said that the culmination of the three powers, executive, judicial, and legislative, in the hands of one branch is, the very definition of tyranny. I'm paraphrasing, of course. He said that in the Federalist Papers. I'm not sure what specific one. I want to say Federalist number 47. I could be incorrect there, but Judge Mark Pittman cites to that actually in his order striking down this program. And it's very much true. Now, mind you, you can appeal IRS holdings. They have an internal appeals process, and then you can seek review in tax court. And you can also seek review in the United States Court of Appeals. I believe you might even be able to choose between tax court and a federal court, though I'd have to check. I believe the Internal Revenue Code for that, unless it's in some other statute. So there are checks, functionally speaking, to prevent agencies, or theoretically to prevent agencies from going rogue. But many, including many on today's Supreme Court, think think that these checks are insufficient and that we really have to take power that the court has essentially allowed to culminate in the executive branch of government in this vast, bureaucracy,
Right.
and start returning it to the people and their elected representatives in the Congress, where our founders intended it to be in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I took the oath to serve at the pleasure of the president for the Trump administration. And my boss had it right. Let's drain that swamp, because that bureaucracy up there is out of control. It is mice after mice and gerbils after gerbils going around on a spinning wheel, trying to spin this nation out of control. But you know what? We, the people, it goes right back to it. We, the people of the United States, we are going to take this country back. Charles Brandt, follow him on Twitter at CharlieBrandt44. He is a Young Voices contributor. He is going to be making a phenomenal lawyer, and he wrote the article in the Federalist, which I have linked in our profile. Author of Weary Taxpayers Can Thank This Legal Doctrine for the Death of Biden, or I call him, Biden's student bailout scheme. Charles, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Thank you for being here. I want you back come the new year, because we're going to break even more down. I'm so glad for you. Thank you so much for all you do at Young Voices.
Happy holidays to you and your viewers, and thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And for all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill. If you are following on our StreamYard link, which carries on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, oh my goodness, Facebook, all of them. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love Young Voices. They have such phenomenal contributors, and I'm grateful for their support with Common Sense America here on this daily podcast that airs every day at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And if you miss a show, hop over to YouTube and check out some of my show clips. If you miss a show, hop over to Rumble. And I tell you what, we have some great guests. Also, before we bring over Portia Berry-Kilby as we talk about Megs, woe is me, and what is ahead for the monarchy, I wanted to let you know, save the date, 2 local. You can hop on Facebook on Thursday night, which is December the 15th from 7 to 8. I'm bringing over to my Facebook Live group. It is Dr. Jennifer London. She's been on the show once or twice now, and she is a phenomenal thought leader, a phenomenal veteran spouse. She is a co-author of the book Ever Vigilant, which got 5-star review on Goodreads, compared to The Sparrow, which got 2. And she will be joining us for an hour conversation on business leadership, on the next generation, on 2023. What do we need to be looking for in our leaders as we, the people, put them in office? So you don't want to miss it. Meet me on Facebook, Eden Gordon Media. That's where the Facebook Live event will be. Also, if you are local to Swansboro, Eastern North Carolina, Friday, December the 16th at 6:15. How can you forget that time period? Salt and Light Academy will be hosting a Christmas spectacular, a children's choir. They will also be having Pictures with Santa, a book signing by Marcy Jean Wrights. So you don't want to miss it. Come out for some good food, holiday fare, and the wonder of the season. On that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be waiting for Portia Berry-Kilby to join us in just a few minutes. We'll be right back. And good morning, and we are back. Just had to take a quick little drink break, and we're back with Portia Berry-Kilby. She is joining us. I am so excited to have her here. She joined us at the passing of our Queen Elizabeth, and I say our queen because I was such an admirer of our dear Queen Elizabeth. And Portia is going to be talking all things pop culture with me this morning. I've been following this news article and this news series, if you will, by, the woe is me couple who don't want to be followed by the paparazzi and just want a private life. Yet they do a Netflix series. Are you kidding me, people? Really? Harry and Megs? You complain about the United States. You complain about the UK. Where are you happy? Are you happy at all? Clearly you're not. So why don't you go to Canada? Anyway, I'm bringing over Portia, and I see you're laughing at me. Good morning.
Morning, Eden. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome back to Common Sense America. How are you doing in the UK? How are things doing over there?
I'm doing well, thank you. Always taking solace from the fact that Meghan and Harry are on your side of the pond. So commiserations for that.
Oh, well, thanks, Portia. I tell you what, I don't know where to start with these two. When I reached out to you and I wanted to talk about this story, I've been listening to Megyn Kelly's podcast, and I swear every day it's something about Megs. And I sat there and was just kind of taking it in. She has so many different aspects of the victimization of Megs and the paparazzi of Megs. And, I kept thinking, woe is me, that Bible verse, woe is me. And Megs is so much, she creates her own controversy and her own PR stunts. And yet Harry compares her to his mother, Princess Diana. There is no comparison. I have been longer alive than Megs and followed Diana from the very beginning, remembering when I was 5 years old, sitting on our living room floor, watching Princess Diana get married. Lady Diana Spencer get married to become princess. And I've been watching it since then. And, as I continue to ramble on, I'm just kind of like, I noticed the reviews on Netflix 2.2. And then his book Spare, which is coming out. I'm thinking spare tire, spare change. That has a 2.2 review on Goodreads. And I'm sitting here thinking, are you guys poor now? Are you looking for money? Okay, enough of my banter. What are your thoughts from the other side of the pond?
I think they are very much the same as your thoughts, Eden. And it is always encouraging to hear someone from the US also speak common sense, because I think there is this kind of hype around Meghan Markle on your side of the pond. That, oh no, she's been so hard done to, so hard done by. And meanwhile, we're like, hang on a minute, are we talking about the same lady? So it's always refreshing to hear someone share our view.
No, thank you. Portia, you're breaking up a little bit.
I think it's mad. It's as though all of the allegations stem from seemingly wanting to escape all of this media and the following and the awful tabloids, but private life. No, oh no.
Are you there? You're breaking up a little bit. You're a little pixelated, and it's every other word I'm getting from you. Okay, are you there? Okay, you there?
Okay.
Okay.
Look at me now.
And now I can hear you.
I am. Yes. Hopefully it works. But yeah, I was just saying, Eden, how it's mad that the whole narrative has been we need to escape from the media and all of this limelight and control the narrative. They've fled to the US. That's not sufficient. They now want to promote their own narrative. But I thought they'd already done that through the book that Spare, through the Oprah interview. It's like, when do you stop? It's a Netflix series of hours-long footage. Will that satisfy them in the telling of Meghan's truth? I'm not convinced it will, because it seems as though nothing is going to satisfy this pair who just want to, I don't know, wreak havoc against their own family.
Yeah, and that's what I see. I sit there and look at how Prince William and Catherine of Wales came to the United States about a week ago. And, they were with the John F. Kennedy Library. They were with Ambassador Caroline Kennedy. They were doing this huge event in regards to the Earth and a lot of his patron organizations that he supports. And they were just so beautifully done, and it's so humbled. And then the Netflix series just happens to drop, and that stupid PR stunt just happens to drop while they're here. And you watch them in comparison to the lack of maturity that you see in Spare and Megs. And that spoke volumes to me with regards to the maturity of William and Catherine and how the royals are handling things. But let me ask you this from the UK standpoint, and having grown up in the monarchy and around it, what do you think their reactions will be? Are they even allowed to say anything about what is taking place, or do they have to remain very quiet? Hey, did you hear me, Portia?
Well, I'd imagine that the royal staffers who have Netflix documentary and yes, so I think it will be very painful for the royal family to watch. It's their son or brother coming out and making all of these allegations against them. I'd imagine that it's not going to be happy viewing at all. But at the same time, they can make a statement on it. It'll be interesting to see if any is made. I don't think any will be, because I think it's really just self-destructive. They're trying to promote their side, but it's backfiring with seeing the loopholes in their arguments. And it's not exactly winning anyone over. It's the same rehashed allegations they made on Oprah, they made before. It's not, yeah, I don't know what their goal is apart from getting their story out again and again, because they're definitely not winning any new followers around.
No, they're really not. One thing I admire about William and Catherine is their loyalty to the monarchy. And another thing I admire is the second year in a row that Catherine is putting on this Christmas event to honor the Queen, obviously this year. What are your thoughts on that and just how she presents herself to the UK and just her leadership and her compassion?
I think with Princess Catherine, you have chalk and cheese when you look at her and then Meghan Markle. You have someone who knows what is expected of her, and I'm sure Catherine would want to do many other things with her time, but she doesn't. She puts the job and the duty first and foremost of her life, of her family's life. And meanwhile, you have Meghan doing, oh, woe is me, as you said, I feel this way, I thought it would be that way. That isn't the point of the royal family. That's not the point of the crown. You should always come last in that setup. So I think Catherine has exemplified that. She has put duty before her own personal whims, and she at least appears to enjoy it, which is always helpful. But I'm sure there are tough days, and yet at the same time, day after day, she carries out her tasks and duties, and with seeming like so kind. The personal interactions that are caught on social media are beautiful. And this is someone who's really putting others first. And yes, it's always easy to behave on camera. It's not so easy to behave on camera when cameras are watching you so much of your day. So really, she is an exemplary figure and a good role model, I think, for many.
Yes, she is a phenomenal role model. I will tell you that. Let me ask you this, and I know there are rumors swarming. I was looking at the news headlines this morning. Do you think Princess Catherine is in fact pregnant with her fourth?
Oh, I somehow doubt it. I don't want to be too ageist, but I guess statistically, the odds would maybe be against her. But if she is, I think that's wonderful. I think that it's always good for people to have large families rather than we need to save the planet, as Meghan and Harry opted for.
Well, and that's fun. I'm glad you brought that up because as they indeed want to save the planet, they talk about saving the planet, and yet they take these private jets that put out all of this toxic fuel as they would see it. And it's such a contradictory of what they quote stand for as they get the Ripple of Hope Award from the Robert F. Kennedy Humane, organization. It just doesn't, everything is just so contradictory to quote what they stand for. It's somewhat of an annoyance. And, as they dropped this Netflix series at Christmas, I felt like they were dropping coal versus anything but gifts. I mean, seriously.
And it's like so much so, like they're saying they want to save the planet. Well, how about you start closer to home and save your family and just try and aim at reconciliation? That the chance of that seems impossible when you're sold out to Netflix and profiting from family drama. I think quite rightly that would destroy the most normal of families, let alone one that really does depend on public perception to a great extent for its functioning.
Every time I see Harry, I think of mental health issues. He looks to Megs, as Megyn Kelly has cited, and I agree with her on this statement, as another mother figure. And that is really affecting, I think, his mental health, because every time I see them in public, and I'll be the first to say I'll psychobabble them all day long. And I sit there and look, and I'm like, this guy is really unhappy. And he used to be, his disposition, his demeanor used to be so much more at peace when he was with the powerful threesome of William and Catherine and himself. And then his whole demeanor has changed. And she has such this control suction on him that he really, he is not able to be his full self. What are your thoughts? I mean, I could psychobabble it. I have so many people who psychobabble with me. It's like, I know we have more important things to do, but this is seriously, you watch this kid lose his mom at 12. And then you see his father really kind of lead and guide him and be there for him. And then you see this guy, this adult, raise two kids of his own and turn his back on his father, let alone the king, but his father. And you see such an unhappy person in modern day. What are your thoughts?
I think, for a start, I'm no psychologist, but it doesn't take a psychologist to observe the interactions at times and think this is not a healthy guy speaking, or this at least isn't a healthy relationship. And I think anyone in their right mind, anyone with some common sense, would look at this and think, this is not going to actually help you in the long run as an individual man, as a father, as a husband, if you are going to support your wife's kind of endeavor to destroy a family and to seek the limelight after supposedly wanting privacy. I think if I were in his situation, I'd by all means retreat to California, but then live a peaceful and quiet life and not care about the PR, don't conduct interviews. And to have kind of those two strains of thought going on at the same time of, I want out of here, but also, let's support my wife in getting all of the glitz and the glam. There's clearly a wire twisted somewhere. And given such an unfortunate childhood with his mother dying in that regard, and the whole circumstances around that death, of course there's going to be problems. But definitely doesn't seem as though Meghan Markle is in any way helping those.
No, she doesn't give me any, warm and fuzzies as being a mother or a nurturer. She's just all very much about herself. And something else that Megyn Kelly cited the other day was she wears her designer clothes to Harlem. And, Harlem, I love my New York City and I love all my boroughs. And I know Harlem is not the wealthiest place to go in your designer clothes. Yeah. And, yeah, go ahead.
I think there's also, I'm always very skeptical of people when they have a lot of money and they opt for this very minimalist interior design. And it's like 50 shades of beige. It's like you have such a rich cultural heritage behind you, like Harry does, as a member of the royal family. It's like, this is what you are willing to opt for. It shows, I think, warped sense of priorities and very peculiar taste, which I'm just immediately don't trust. It's a bit biased, but it doesn't surprise me that that's kind of Meghan's kind of personality is beige, 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 so that she can just project herself ever more vividly among women.
I'll be interested to if you have you watched the Netflix series at all? Have you taken, spent those precious 3 hours of your life to watch that?
I refuse to support it, and I think Netflix is doing dirty work to be promoting this program, which is
Yes.
and could cause damage to the royal family. So no, I
Yes.
won't endorse it. But I watched the commentary around it, and Megyn Kelly was excellent on her
Yes.
critique,
She has
and
been.
far more worthwhile. That was only 20 minutes of my time rather than 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. I actually canceled my Netflix subscription because they had decided to just really focus on such woke commentary, and that's not me. And I'm not going to support and spend my, whether it's $6 or $7 now or $8, I don't even know what it is for subscription anymore, and and do that. I'm just not doing that anymore. And so, yeah, like you said, I take my mental health walks, and people laugh at me every time when I say that because I listen to Megyn Kelly on my walks, and it's just like, how is it really a mental health walk? I'm like, yeah, it actually is, because she talks about a lot of the the things that are facing our kitchen tables and our homes, but yet a little pop culture thrown in there. Let me also ask you this, you being in the UK and preparing for Christmas, and, the official King Charles aspect and the ceremonies that will go into that. What does that look like? And when is that coming down? When is that scheduled for? Do you know?
So I guess the main thing to look out for would be the King's speech, which for my entire lifetime and for many people's lifetime, it's always been the Queen's speech. But this
Yeah.
speech will be an address by King Charles, and I think it's normally at 3 o'clock on Christmas Day. So it's very common for households across the country to gather around the television and watch that before moving on to other events. And it will be about 15 minutes. And I'd imagine a lot of it will focus on the late Queen
Yes.
and on her death and on kind of the legacy that he has inherited. It'll be fascinating if he mentions Harry and Meghan, maybe in a throwaway line of my, family, including Harry and Meghan over in the US, supporting their move away from England. But
Mhm.
yes, I hope it won't feature them heavily. I think it'll primarily be about Queen Elizabeth.
One thing I always loved about watching the Queen's delivery and her speech during the Christmas holiday was the pictures that she chose to surround herself with. And every year it was something a little different. So last year it was Prince Philip, obviously, and his passing. And the years before that, it was Prince George and Prince William and Prince Charles. And as it continues on in that next generation, so it'll be interested to see what pictures he surrounds himself with for that address. And then the crowning, the official crowning of him as king. When will that be happening?
That will be in May, so he'll
Okay.
be officially coronated at some point in May. I'm forgetting the date, but it will be
Okay.
a public holiday over here, so we'll all be able to take it off and watch accordingly and line the streets.
Is that what happens? You line the streets when that happens, and what kind of festivities usually go along with that?
It would ordinarily be people, a fair number of people will flock to London and try and get around that area, so Westminster area, to see any carriage draw by, to see him, his whole entourage go past. So kind of for like a minute's glance or a moment's glance. But I'm sure there'll be a big buzz there. And then more broadly across the UK, it will be screened on TVs, be it at home, sometimes the pub, if the pubs are open, which isn't necessarily going to be the case if it's bank holiday, but because they closed, for most of them closed for the Queen's funeral, but some still stayed open and showed the proceedings. So I don't know, but I think a lot of people will be very much behind him, and he said it will be a scaled down service in terms of the pomp and ceremony, but I hope it's not. I think people like the pomp of the British custom, and it gives them a sense of pride. So hopefully he will pull out all of the stops.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. I absolutely loved being in the UK when I was in college. And I remember all those amazing pubs that we would go into and, having the shepherd's pie and just the traditions over there and absolutely loving that. Gosh, what I wouldn't do to hop on a jet to come over and, see the coronation of King Charles. I think that'd be absolutely fabulous. But on that note, I would love to have you back as we get closer to that time period. And of course, as Spare really hits the market in 2023 in January. If you would have come back after you've read it or, perused it, we can break that down and see if the numbers have gone up at all. On good
Or
read.
plummeted.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Plummeted. Let's plan on that one. But until then, happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you. And thank you so much for joining us here and talking about my pop culture fetish with Megs and Harry. So I'm
Lovely.
grateful for
Happy
you.
Christmas.
Oh, thank you. Happy Christmas to you. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Portia.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And for all of those who are tuning in, it is just about the top of the hour. We're almost at 10 a.m. Eastern time here on Tuesday, December the 13th. And that was Portia Berry-Kilby. She's a contributor for Young Voices UK. She's been here on this show many times. She was here to do the commentary on the Queen's passing and the ceremonies leading into it. And you can follow her on Twitter at Portia BK. And I tell you what, I look forward to having her back here on the show as we head into January. We can talk more pop culture and the spare tire. And then we can also hope to have her back here for the King's coronation in May. That will be quite the spectacular event. I love bringing these stories to you here at Common Sense America. I learn as much as you guys do on these kitchen table topics and things that are happening in and around our culture, good and bad. But I had to make it a little lighthearted today on the Megs Woe Is Me feature. So tomorrow we will be bringing to the show Christian Watson. He is going to be talking with us about Christians and this woke culture, something my husband and I talk about daily, just about. And, if you haven't seen the news headlines today, I will let you know that Biden is signing the Marriage Respect Act, which is more of a disrespect act because it disrespects the Christians and those and the religious freedom. And I tell you what, and the traditional marriage, the biblical form of marriage, is being diminished as he signs this today. So, if you have a chance, listen to 990 a.m. If you have the morning drive or the afternoon drive with Sebastian Gorka, or in the morning from 6 to 9 with Krista Gall. Krista Gall is a very good friend of mine. I listen to him before I come over and come to you guys on this podcast every morning at 9. So if you have a chance, check out 990 a.m. for your morning or evening drives. And then also Daily Signal has a long list of things that are coming down the pike. And in the few minutes we have left, I will read those to you just really quickly and what is ahead as we head into this week. We have a lot of topics that are coming down the pike from the Daily Signal at the Heritage Foundation, their morning bell for December the 13th. Top news of the day. Psychotherapist states, I warned about Sam Brinton, the non-binary Biden official now arrested for theft, but no one listened. That's the top news article. In addition to that, Department of Justice official admits targeting pro-lifers is response to overturn of Roe. That's something to be very concerned about. And it goes back to our religious freedoms and our religious rights. We are being targeted. Those who are of faith in the public square, we are being targeted. And I brought on North Carolina Right to Life, and I brought on the doctor from Charlotte talking about the abortion pill reversal. We are going to be targeted as we continue to talk about these things. Also, an analysis, what you need to know about Europe's energy crisis this winter. And if you hadn't remembered, the Daily Signal also focused on the energy issues we will be having here in the Northeast this winter, something to be aware of. Also, commentary, Senate poised to vote to protect charter schools, something to keep in mind. News of the day, Republicans make midterm gains with an unlikely group, and that is young Americans. And former Southwest Airlines flight attendant reinstated by court after firing over pro-life views. Do you guys see a theme there? There is a theme. And we who believe in saving the lives of babies, we who believe in traditional and biblical marriage, we believe in pro-life, we believe in our country and America and what we stand for, God, family, country. It is all being challenged. It is being censored. And we need to be more than ever vigilant. We need to be ever vigilant on what is ahead, especially as we head into 2023. On that note, we are already a little after 10 a.m. Eastern time. It is Tuesday, December the 13th. Get ready. We have a great show for you tomorrow and some good surprises coming to you this week. New features and new faces. Until then, be strong and be courageous and don't give in and don't give up. See you tomorrow.